Everyone to the Livermore Indivisible General Meeting for June 2021. My name is Marla Kirby. I'm a member of the Livermore Indivisible Steering Committee. This is a special meeting and is being co-sponsored by Along the Line Bay Area, OFA, East Bay, and the Alameda County Coalition for Fair Redistricting. I'd like to thank our co-sponsors, and I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our guests who are in attendance today. Today, we will talk about redistricting. What is it, who does it, and how we can get involved in the process. The meeting will be divided in two main parts. For the first part, we will hear from Pedro Toledo, a commissioner on the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. We'll talk about redistricting on the state level and the work of that commission. You should feel free to ask Commissioner Toledo questions at the end of his presentation, or submit your question to the chat box, and he will respond as best as he is able. But I should note that this is an educational presentation only and is not a forum to provide to the commission public input or public comment on redistricting matters. Then we will hear from Kyoko Takayama, who many of you know, a local community organizer here in Livermore, who will be presenting on behalf of All on the Line Bay Area, and who will talk about redistricting on a local and county level, and especially here in Alameda County. But first, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Pedro Toledo. He serves as the Chief Administrative Officer of Petaluma Health Center, which is one of the largest nonprofit organizations in Sonoma County. Prior to that, Commissioner Toledo served as the Director of Community and Government Relations for the Redwood Community Health Coalition, a network of community health clinics that spans 4 Northern California counties. He also serves on the board of numerous organizations, including the Redwood Empire Food Bank, and has received multiple community recognition awards, including the North Bay Business Journal's 40 Under 40 recognition. Commissioner Toledo grew up in Alameda. He earned a bachelor's degree in anthropology and a master's degree in sociology from Stanford, a law degree from Cornell University Law School, and a master's in healthcare services administration from Georgetown University. He resides in Sonoma County and has been appointed as a no party preference member of the Citizens Redistricting Commission. Welcome, Commissioner Toledo.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting the California Citizens Redistricting Commission to present at your event. And before I begin with the formal presentation, I just wanted to add a little bit more about me. As a community health center leader, I've had the opportunity to serve and advocate for underserved communities my entire career. And on a personal note, my father came to Northern California as a bracero, as a farm worker back in the 1950s. And after he became a US citizen, he voted in every election and instilled in me the importance of civic participation and ensuring that all Californians have the opportunity to elect representatives of their choosing and who will listen to their voices is critical to a thriving democracy. And serving on the commission provides me with an opportunity to serve the citizens of California and work towards a more equitable, fair, and just democracy. And in today's presentation, we're going to go over who the commission is, what we do, and how you can get involved in the redistricting process. And let me share my slides. So I think the sharing function is disabled. If I can enable sharing, I can, there we go. So just as a reminder, California regulations strictly prohibit commissioners and our staff from taking public input about redistricting matters outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting. And what that means is specific input around the lines. So specific lines that you might be interested in advocating for. So that all has to come through public input sessions and or public input methodologies that we'll be talking about later today. So what is redistricting? Simply put, redistricting is defined as drawing new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each electoral district. And you might be wondering why we have to redraw the districts every 10 years. And it's important to remember that a lot happens in 10 years. Communities change, priorities, interests, goals. People are born, people die, they move. Communities grow and they shrink. And areas that were once roughly the same number of people become unequal. These are some of the reasons why districts need to be drawn. As communities change, the districts need to be updated to reflect those changes. And one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. How the district boundaries are configured can make the difference between empowering and maximizing voters' voices or minimizing and muting those voices. In most other states, politicians redraw districts and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. And speaking up about your community is critical to help keep your community whole to the extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by elected officials when making decisions such as quality and funding of the quality and funding of your child's education or determining your tax rates. And your input is valuable in shaping the new political boundaries. We thought it might be beneficial for us to break down how redistricting affects you. The Voters First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district maps away from politicians and gave it to the people. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one street to the next. Northern California might champion environmental and economic issues, while Central California might champion water and agricultural issues. And Southern California might champion issues dealing with transportation, housing, healthcare, and employment. Funding priorities. Tied to the issue of electing representatives that champion your issues, you might want elected officials that have your financial interest at heart. When the time comes to build a budget, you'll want representatives fighting to ensure that your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services such as education, water, fire protection. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help commissioners understand where your community starts and where it ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input to regarding their community that ultimately impacts the law and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. The US Constitution requires that every American receive as close to equal representation as possible in government. As populations of districts change over time, it leaves some people overrepresented and others underrepresented in government. Redistricting aims to even out the populations between districts. After the federal government publishes updated census information, California must redraw the boundaries of its congressional, state senate, state assembly, and state board of equalization districts so that the districts correctly reflect the latest count of the state's population. Redistricting is based on the idea that each of our voices should be represented fairly by creating districts that have the same number of people. Census results are used to draw new maps every 10 years to account for the ways that people have changed, or populations have changed rather, and moved across the state and districts. At the federal level, reapportionment takes place to reallocate US House seats among states. This too is done after the national census to ensure that seats are held in states in proportion to the size of their population. California currently has 53 seats, and the commission will be drawing 52 seats this time around. Historically, legislators have drawn maps that allow them to choose their constituents rather than enabling constituents to choose their representatives. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give people the power to choose their representatives. And this is why independent redistricting matters. We have talked about how redistricting affects you, and now we'll explain why independent redistricting matters. Democracy depends on the voters having the opportunity to choose the representatives. When elected officials redraw the lines of their own districts, they get to design their own territories and choose who their voters are. This slide highlights key terms in redistricting to help you understand why it's important to delegate the power of redistricting to the people. Gerrymandering happens when the election district boundaries are drawn in a way that gives a particular set of people, like a political party or a racial group, an unfair political advantage over another. And this graph shows how in a jurisdiction with 50 people, 60% orange and 40% purple, 5 districts can be redrawn in multiple ways, but it's not always fair. The first 2 examples show 2 ways to draw district lines in a fair manner, where the districts are drawn to reflect the population proportionally. The 2 examples on the far right show ways to draw district maps in a manner that does not reflect the population fairly, which is referred to as gerrymandering. This is why independent commissions like California's commission were created to remove the politics from the process and focus on the people. The commission must follow these criteria and in this order when drawing district maps. First, district maps must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. Secondly, we must comply with Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. District maps must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to one another. Districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Districts should be geographically compact such that nearly or nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. And this requirement refers to density, not shape. And where practicable, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts, and Board of Equalization districts should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. In addition, the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map, and districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or a political party. So we're one of many redistricting efforts occurring in California, and I know you'll be hearing about others. And the commission is redrawing districts for state offices, while counties, cities, school districts, water districts, and others are also redrawing their districts at the same time. And we wanted to bring this to your attention because different efforts are happening simultaneously and it can be confusing. Aside from being involved in the state redistricting process, we want to encourage you to also be involved in your state and in your local and regional redistricting efforts. So a little history. Prior to 2010, legislators in California drew the lines. If the legislature failed to properly draw the lines, then the court stepped in and drew the lines. In 2008, California voters passed Proposition 11, the Voters First Act, authorizing the creation of an independent commission to draw new district lines for the state Senate, the state Assembly, and the State Board of Equalization. In 2010, Proposition 20, the Voters First Act for Congress, added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission's responsibilities. Our goal as a commission is to spread the word that the people's role did not end with being counted in the census and to collect valuable community input to assist us in the process of redrawing new district boundaries. The 2010 Redistricting Commission was the first independent commission was in California. The 2020 Redistricting Commission is building upon their work and will leave behind detailed documents to help the 2030 Commission when they perform their duties a decade from now. Other states with independent commissions include Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington. You may be wondering how commissioners are selected, and the commissioners went through a very rigorous application process that attracted over 20,000 applications in 2019. After an initial review, over 2,000 individuals completed a supplemental application. And after a very thorough and public review, 120 applicants, 40 Republican, 40 Democrat, and 40 others were invited to interview, from which 60 were chosen to be presented to the legislature. The California State Legislature was allowed to remove no more than 24 candidates from consideration, leaving a total of 36. The first 8 members were selected through a public drawing in July 2020, and the final 6 were then carefully selected by the first 8 commissioners in August 2020, taking several considerations into effect, including political party, geography, race, gender, and expertise. The 2020 California Citizens Redistricting Commission is comprised of 14 members, made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and four of us who are not affiliated with either of those parties. The commissioners are diverse in geography, as we are in opinions and expertise. There's 7 of us from Northern California, 7 from Southern California, 8 women, 6 men, all with very diverse backgrounds. And we welcome you to join our commission meetings, which are all held online due to COVID-19 restrictions, and instructions and the link for attending those meetings are available on our website. So we're in the process of winding down our education sessions and beginning to hold our public input meetings, which we just held the first one on the 10th. And that's where we are accepting community input and public testimony to help us draw the new electoral lines. And we'll continue to hold public input sessions throughout the summer. The commission will draw maps for 4 government bodies: Congress, 52 seats, State Senate, 40 seats, State Assembly, 80 seats, and the Board of Equalization, 4 seats. So from February to June, we have been conducting these redistricting basic presentations all over California to educate the public about the redistricting process and to encourage members of the public and community groups to participate in the public testimony process. And we have divided the state into 11 outreach zones to better manage our outreach efforts and to help us build relationships with community groups. So when drawing maps, we have to be mindful of communities of interest. We can obtain the city, county information, but we need the communities of interest information from Californians themselves. Communities of interest are defined as a concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. And examples of this include areas in which the people share similar living standards, have similar cultures, use the same types of transportation facilities or perhaps healthcare facilities, and that have similar work opportunities or have access to the same media. People can belong to multiple communities of interest at the same time. But keep in mind that a community of interest is not the same as a district, but communities of interest are key building blocks for or of districts. So communities of interest can be described by creating maps and telling us about your community. While there are no clear rules on how to define a community of interest, the following are the basic elements to help you define your community. Personal stories are very powerful. So sharing examples of things members of your community have in common and what makes your community unique. Imagine describing your community to a visitor from out of town. Does your neighborhood share certain celebrations or traditions like festivals or parades? Are there important places where your community gathers like parks or community centers? And what's the history of how your community came together? This can be done at commission meetings or hearings. You can also provide written testimony. A written description can be used to tell your community's story. And of course, describe what connects the people in your community and why it's important that they be kept together during redistricting. When possible, include statistics to support your testimony, including data on ethnicity or religious groups, education levels, graduation rates, etc. And using reliable sources of information such as census data is helpful. Communities often get involved in redistricting because they feel their issues have not been adequately addressed by their elected officials. So highlighting community issues in personal stories and written narratives helps to demonstrate the importance of having elected officials who understand and respond to your community needs. Has your community come together to advocate for important services, better schools, roads, or health clinics in your neighborhood? Have you worked for more recognition or support of your community, like having holidays recognized or historical events commemorated? And creating a map of your neighborhood or area. If you can mark the street names and significant locations on a map. You can include significant landmarks and gathering places, including social service agencies, community centers, shopping districts, schools, and religious places. And it's helpful to have or give your map a name to help us to serve as a reminder about what makes your community unique. And you can, of course, use our electronic or paper communities of interest tool, which is located on our website, to create a map. So your input is vital to the success of the commission, and we've identified the ways you can participate in 3 simple steps. First, describe your community and tell us about your community. What are your shared interests? What brings you together? What is important to your community? Are there nearby areas that you want to be included in your district, or nearby areas that you don't want to be included in your district with? And why or why not? Draw your community on a map, send your testimony directly to the commission. All this can be done using our online tool that allows you to describe, draw, and send your input to the commission. And please visit drawmycacommunity.org to provide your input. So you can provide your input to the commission in several ways, including through our online communities of interest mapping tool, by visiting our website, by emailing us, phoning us, or sending us a letter via a US mail. In addition to English, the online communities of interest tool is available in Spanish, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Korean, Armenian, Farsi, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, Punjabi, and Khmer. Language access is very important to the commission, and we have taken several steps to ensure that Californians will be able to participate in this process, including translating our materials and providing interpretation services for our public sections of our community commission meetings, and also interpretation is available at all of our public hearing sessions. We do ask that if you need interpretation services, that you contact the commission 5 days or with 5 business days prior to the meeting to request those services. And of course, we'll do our best to contract with an interpreter in the requested language, even if it's not one of the languages I listed prior a couple seconds ago. So COVID-19 has delayed many things, including our ability to access census data. to help us draw district lines. On February 12th, the Census Bureau announced that it would be delivering redistricting data to all states by September 30th. And at this point, the commission expects to receive the census data in mid-August. And we're working very closely with the legislature and others to minimize the impact of the delay on the 2020 elections. So the U.S. Census Bureau continues to update us on the expected availability of the census data, and we'll be adjusting our timeline once we actually get the census data. And at this point, we expect to have our maps drawn no later than February 2022 for the July primaries. Just as a reminder, California state law strictly prohibits commissioners from taking public input about specific line drawing in your communities, but I am happy to answer any questions you might have about redistricting in general, or the public input process, or any other questions you might have. And I'll leave you with our contact information as well. So with that, I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the first question is, can people get access to this presentation? Can they be provided a copy somehow, or a link that we can send out to the group? People are interested in this information.
Absolutely, it's on our website, and I'm happy to provide a link to the presentation. It's available to the public.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everything we do is very public because this is such an important process. The line drawing will be done in public. It will be done via video. The communities of interest testimony is done through public processes, and all of our presentations are, to the extent possible, also posted publicly.
Great, thank you. Which is why you can't accept public comment at this forum, because it's not a public forum, the designated public forum for that information.
That's right. So no, so I can't really accept specific input on how you want your specific districts to look like, but certainly if there's general questions around redistricting, I can answer those questions.
Okay, so there is a couple of questions here. How many people per congressional house district, if you have that information, about how many people are included in each congressional house district now?
So I don't have that information on the top of my head. We do have estimates at this point, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. I do know that each congressional district will have to expand by about 50,000 people. And so every congressional district will be expanding because of the revised number of seats that we have received in California. So we'll have 52 seats instead of 53 seats, which means that to cover every person in California, we'll have to make each district a little bit bigger.
Right. Yeah, Kyoko had posted in the chat that it's around 760,000 people per district now. So yeah, it is bigger. There's another question about what were the meetings with Facebook and Google that the commissioners attended about? I'm not sure what that is in reference to, but if you have anything you can share about that. Sure.
So I think that's in reference to the outreach committee, and my understanding is that there were no formal conversations with Google or Facebook, but in their as they were developing their and each, so we have subcommittee meetings. Subcommittee, we're broken up into subcommittees, and I'm on the government relations subcommittee and on the legal affairs subcommittee, and I've served on others as well to recruit our chief counsel, our executive director, et cetera. And we also have an outreach committee, and I don't serve on that committee, but that committee was charged with developing outreach plan. So this is the first time that the commission has gone out and to do educational sessions in the public. Last time around, the 2010 commission didn't have enough time to do these educational sessions out in the community. As they were developing their plan for outreach, they did meet with various stakeholders and or talk to stakeholders across the state and would bring that information back to the full commission. So I believe I believe there were some interactions with staff from Google and Facebook as to how we might use social media and other means to broadcast and better reach the citizens of California. But I wasn't part of those meetings, so I don't know specifically what happened, but except for what was presented at the full commission meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you. There are a couple of questions.
Part of part of that committee's planning processes to develop a outreach plan that would allow us to do these types of educational sessions and to promote them.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess along those lines, I had a question. I'll just ask my own question about whether you talked about how the commissioners were selected, and it appears to be a cross section of the state and political parties and so forth. But are there areas or groups that have been identified as not being well represented on the commission that you're making a special effort for outreach? For example, I'm thinking, Native American tribes, rural folks, immigrants, youth, lower socioeconomic status persons, that there are communities that might not be otherwise represented, or is it really up to the public to provide the input?
We've paid particular attention to areas that have been obviously not represented on the commission, and some of those, of course, there's only 14 of us, and we can only come from 14 areas, and so there are there's not a commissioner from, for example, the Humboldt County and Shasta County and actually most counties. And so we are paying particular attention to rural communities. We're also paying attention to immigrant and youth, and actually in Native American communities. We met with tribal leaders across the state in public at our commission meetings to brainstorm how we could better reach these communities. We've also met with the farm bureaus, especially in some of the rural areas. And so we have focused primarily on areas where the commission felt that there may not be as much representation or enough representation on the commission level. But we also are in the process of hiring and have hired staff from, at this point, it's about 50 staff that will be doing work and participating and helping us further our outreach efforts. We also will be doing media buys and radio buys to reach all people in California, because it's important to reach everybody. And so that's what we're aiming to do, whether it's urban areas or rural areas or Native American or other discrete populations. It's really important to get as many people out and give them the opportunity to provide input in this process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. There are a couple of questions or a comment about the 10-year cycle and how, is questions about whether that's too long a time period to really reflect changes in the population, and there's a question about whether there's any mechanism for doing a mid-decade change in districts based on significant changes in population.
So I'm not aware of any any methodology would allow us to make population corrections, because everything is based on the census, and the census comes out every 10 years, and those are constitutional requirements. So at this point, I'm not aware of anything that would allow us to do that, other than court intervention.
Okay.
If for some reason the maps weren't correctly correctly drawn. And that has happened in the past, where the courts have stepped in and redrawn maps.
Okay. Someone has a question about what interaction does the commission have with county leaders, if any? The Alameda County commissioners seem to think they've done a good job in the past and seem to want to handle their own redistricting process again. So there's just a question of whether you interact at all on a county level, or is that a totally separate process?
We have interacted with some counties, and certainly the Association of Counties, to talk about how we might coordinate some of our public testimony efforts as we were developing our public testimony plan. And so there has been quite a bit of conversation, especially with some of the larger counties in Southern California and some of the smaller counties throughout the north and the central part of California. In terms of, so most of our conversations have been around coordinating public testimony, not so much because we know that members of the public will be providing very similar input to county commissions, and that might, if we coordinate, it might be able to make it easier for populations, especially the hard to reach populations that we're all trying to get engaged in this process. And so asking hard to reach populations to go to redistricting and provide testimony to county redistricting and city redistricting and state redistricting and other redistricting efforts is challenging. So we were trying to figure out if there's a way to coordinate this a little bit better, so that so members of the public could give input once or twice instead of many times, especially those individuals who will be targeted by all of us many times over.
Yeah, so would there be a sharing of information then that's obtained during the public comment with other redistricting bodies? So
if in our system, the community input tool allows members of the public to download any input and send it to whoever they want. And so they are able to do that through our community input process. There's no, at this point, we don't have any coordination where it would go automatically to their, or it, would ask the member of the public if they wanted to be sent to a specific other body. And so that's something we're thinking about, and are probably not going to be able to do this time around, but maybe for the 2030, that'll be part of our feedback and recommendations for next time around.
Yeah, that brings up one question that I had thought of. It's a fairly new process here in California. It's only been done the one time before. Was there much in terms of lessons learned that you obtained from the prior commission about things to watch out for, things to do, maybe how to improve outreach? Was there much in the way of that you can draw from as you're doing your work on this commission?
So thankfully there was the last commission provided a very detailed, and the staff did as well from the last commission, very detailed set of recommendations, including the creation of an outreach effort and education sessions that they didn't have time to do last time around. So that was one of the things that they highlighted. I think one of the things to remember is that so much changes in 10 years. What was technology just changed so much, and what we can do now is different. It's very different than what they were able to do back then, and in terms of cost and efficiency. So I'm hopeful that 10 years from now, we'll be able to do even more. And so while we do plan to leave very detailed recommendations, a lot changes in 10 years. So some of these things may not be as applicable. I think a lot of the recommendations that the commission gave us were difficult to implement in light of COVID-19. I mean, no one could have imagined that happening, right? The last commission traveled to the state of California, and we certainly thought we were going to do that as well when we applied for the commission, and that hasn't been possible. But we've done the best we can with this online platform. And I think one other thing that that members of the public might not know is that every 10 years the commission restarts itself from scratch to some extent, right? So when we got appointed back in August, we had to we had temporary staff that got assigned to us, and we had to do our policies and procedures manual and begin the process of hiring our staff and hiring an executive director and hiring a legal counsel and hiring business manager. So you're essentially starting a government agency in a couple of months. We had to, the website that you see was done in the first 3 months with after we hired our marketing director. So we essentially start a government agency. We have like 3 months to start a government agency, implement a government agency, and normally, if it hadn't been for the delays with the census, we would have had maybe 6 to 8 months to draw the maps, start a government agency, initiate all the contracting that needs to happen through very bureaucratic processes, and draw the maps, which makes it a little bit difficult and so and challenging. And and I think many of us didn't realize that this would be almost a full-time job. And all of us are working many of us have work outside of the commission as well. But starting a government agency from scratch is a challenge, and so that's something that we've had to do, and the next commission will hopefully not have to do that. We're going to give strong recommendations that we have a government structure, a civil service type of government structure in place, so that they don't have to spend as much time as we did just enacting policies, procedures on how to manage the business and how to and many of the other things that we once had but needed to be recreated 10 years later.
Yeah. Along those lines, there's a question about that this sounds like a lot of work. Are you paid for your service to the state?
We get a per diem. For the most part, it's volunteer work, and we do it because we're we care about the state of California. It's the way to give back to the state. We are paid a per diem for days worked, and but it's a nominal per diem.
Okay. Someone asked a question about how the first community of interest meeting went on June 10th. Did you have a lot of participation? Did you get a lot of good information from that?
So we received about 50 members of the public. We have been experimenting with this appointment system. And so where folks would go onto our website and register to give input, especially if you're needing interpretation services. And that's actually one of the reasons why it was implemented. We have a committee that worked on developing this process. I, of course, having worked in healthcare and gone through the coronavirus, was a little bit skeptical about any appointment system, but it has worked relatively pretty well thus far. And anyone can call in and give input, but those who have a time slot get priority in the process. And so So we did receive quite a, 50 input, 50 members of the public giving about 3 minutes each with breaks and required breaks for staff and such was pretty good for our first session because we didn't advertise it too much as we were working through our. We wanted to work through all of our processes and work out any kinks we might have with the appointment system. But we did fill up all of the appointments through the appointment system, so that was it was welcome news.
That's good. Yeah. I don't see any more specific questions. I think you answered the question that I've seen, and there's the questions that I've seen, and I think there's other commentary about how to give public comments in the chat. If anyone else has a question, you can raise your hand now for Commissioner Toledo. I don't see anyone, so if that's it, I want to thank the commissioner for his time this afternoon and for his service on the commission. It does sound like a lot of work, and we're grateful that people like you are willing to do that.
It's important work, and hopefully members of the public will take the time to give input to the commission as well, because I think that's critical to making sure that your communities are kept together and represent the needs of your community.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to move on to the next part of the meeting then. Kyoko Takayama will talk about local redistricting, especially on the county level, where we have redistricting going on as well, as sort of referred to earlier, and she'll give more information about that. Kyoko?
Yes, just give me a second to share the presentation again. Okay, so now we are going to move to the local redistricting basics. So my name is Kyoko Takayama. I have been a community organizer with OFA since 2011. And OFA is no longer, and now it's working on the All on the Line campaign, which is redistricting campaign all over the nation. California is not targeted states, obviously, with redistricting commissions. However, we are actually encouraging everybody to make community of interest input, as well as just pay more attention to the local redistricting. So we are now in Alameda County, we actually have the coalition, and I am part of that organization as well. However, today I'm actually talking as All on the Line volunteer. So what is redistricting in community organizing? So Commissioner Toledo actually gave us the legal side of redistricting. So for us, it is once a decade opportunity to redraw district lines. To do what? To rebalance population, one person, one vote. That's basics of the democracy, I hope. To create a level playing field for elections. So we are not favoring one person, one party. We don't want that. And to get the community voices heard on issues. So if the politicians, elected officials do not need to worry about the election because they already have rigged district, they don't need to listen to us. So we need to actually have fair districting to actually get heard and to get fair distribution of funding. Of course, most of the elected officials, especially in local, they have a big power to distribute the fundings. So what is redistricting really? Is that all it is? So this is an opportunity to stop gerrymandering, in other words, right? Because gerrymandering has created an absurd reality where politicians now pick their voters instead of the voters picking their politicians. This one was from former California Governor Schwarzenegger. And interestingly, he was the person who actually pushed for independent commission. At the moment, opposition came from actually Democrat Party. How about that? Just a little bit of the history right there. So, share redistricting history. Commissioner has already touched on this one. 2008, Prop 11, the Voters First Act, created the Citizens Commission and added Congress in 2010. But for the most part, local redistricting was totally left out from this movement. 2016, finally, SB 1108 authorized all counties and general law cities to establish independent citizen commissions. Before this, they have to actually change the charter, but now they don't have to do that. In 2019, AB 849, their Fair Maps Act was passed to improve and standardize the local redistricting process. Unfortunately, SB 139, the People's Map Act, to mandate large counties to create independent commissions was vetoed. So if you think about this, in California, the movement to transfer the power of redistricting from the legislature to the people, the Citizen Commission, have been there since 2008, which is great. And we really need to push that forward. So who draws lines in California? Independent Citizens Commission, we draw the lines to the Board of Equalization. And this is something I'm not sure about. The commissioner says 4 districts and I actually saw 5 districts, so number is a little bit different. Congress, 52 seats, we lost 1, so it's about 760. California state is 40, so it's almost 1 million people in each district. Assembly is 80, so it's about 500. So still, a lot of local redistricting government bodies are drawing the lines. Counties and cities, school boards and special districts, most of them are still drawing their own lines. However, the commission's advisory, hybrid, or independent can also draw the lines, especially for counties and cities. That's a new thing since 2016. So who can draw lines for local redistricting? So there are 4 ways to draw the lines. Legislative body, government body, so the elected officials can draw the line. Independent commission can draw the line. Hybrid commission can draw the line. Advisory commission can draw the line. So what's the difference? Independent and hybrid commissions, application open to all eligible residents and not appointed directly by legislative body. So for instance, League of Women Voters will be proxied and to do the selection part. So that's just separate from elected officials. So we are removing them from the redistricting process. And drawing lines will be done by the commission in both independent and hybrid. And hybrid are required to have 2 or more maps. And then modification by legislative body are not allowed for these 2 commissions. So they cannot actually change the maps, which is good. And finally, adopting map will be done by independent commission with the independent commission, and with the hybrid case, adopting map will be left for the legislative body. So just giving a little bit of saying it, which is I believe it's okay. On the other hand, advisory redistricting commission is appointed by legislative body, and drawing lines, it's recommendation only. And after the recommendation, if the legislative body doesn't like that particular map, they can change it. And of course, that adapting map will be left to the legislative body. So in a way, you still have to actually go through all these motions and creating kind of illusion of you have power, but advisory district commission is, in my opinion, really not having any power into that process. So who's drawing the lines in 2020? So for the county, 4 counties are using independent commissions. One is Santa Clara County hybrid commissions, and many of them are advisory commission or legislative body, meaning legislative body actually kept the power. In the city, very few, but still some are actually drawing their own lines, but independent commissions and hybrid commissions are coming in a little bit faster than the counties. So AB 849 Fair Maps Act mandates ranked criteria for the local redistricting. So Commissioner already talked about Equal Population and Voting Rights Act, Minority Protection a little bit. So those are the federal requirements. So they come first. Then state criteria come in. Contiguity, neighborhood and community of interest, integrity of city and census designated place, identifiable boundaries by residents, compactness, and no partisan favoritism. I highlighted the neighborhood and identifiable boundaries by residents because this is where we have to come in. Nobody knows our neighborhood more than we do who live there. And identifiable boundaries by residents, that's kind of new concept, right? We have to know where the boundary are and it's identifiable for just a regular person. That's totally new and empowering the residents, us. So with this, how does this work actually better? So this is the current Alameda County district map. So are they compliant with the new regulations? For the record, in 2011, when they were drawn, this was compliant for all the regulations. So there was nothing wrong about that. How about now, if this is to get evaluated? So the first, that tiny part, this one, is not exactly contiguous. It's just connecting with one position. So that's not too good. And Pleasanton is part of the Tri-Valley. If you live in Alameda County, almost everybody knows Tri-Valley because it's kind of separate. It's also called East County, and that's a neighborhood or the community of interest. However, they actually have 2 districts. Pleasanton is carved out in District 4, while Dublin and Livermore are in District 1. And then Snow, these yellow lines are the Snow boundary. It's a census designated place. It's not the city, but population 900 is divided between District 1 and 2. That's not cool. How about Ashland? Population 22,000. It's this teeny tiny orange area, and that's divided between 3 and 4. Is there more? Yes. Oakland, population of 430,000. That's big, so they have to be divided, but they are divided into 3 districts. That's not necessary, I hope. And then Fremont, population 240,000 is divided between District 1 and 2. Is there any more wrong? Something about wrong in this map? District 1 bridges the coastal range to combine Fremont, Livermore, and East County. So here is the big natural boundary. It's coastal range of from the Berkeley, Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward. There are these huge hills you have to go over, and it's totally ignored. You can actually see District 4 goes over, District 2 goes over, District 1 goes over. So maybe we can do better than this. Also, District 4 includes parts of Oakland, like here, through the unincorporated area to the present one. It's elongated and not compact, and it's passing all the neighborhood communities. So that would not be too good either. So that being said, districting is not easy. California actually have a lot of challenges this year. Well, for the first part, we are big. So it's not easy to get all those testimonies. And we are diverse. We have the language barriers and cultural barriers. And some cultures do not like to speak up. So how are we going to overcome that? And we are immigrant community, and we still have lots of fear in our community. And of course, associated with all those, digital divide. So it's great to have us coming together over Zoom, so we don't need to travel, but technology is not available the same way to everybody. Or literacy of online access is not the same. So that's not really fair. So we have to overcome that. And of course, COVID. So we are going to probably move to in-person / digital combination of outreach, and it's gonna make it more difficult. On top of that, census data is delayed, so we have the compressed timeline. And Alameda County has all the same reason, and we have diverse population of 1.7 million. And as you can see, we do not really have the one big dominant population. We are equally divided. 31% white, almost 30% Asian, 23% Hispanic Latino, and 11% are Black African, and a bunch of other population. Ethnicity and races are very diverse. And we are diverse in our neighborhoods as well. So this is not the plural, which means normally what we see is just a dominant population only. Instead, this is 2010 census block data, and each dot, if you can actually go to the neighborhood, each dot represent different ethnicity and race. So the white it looks almost like a purple in more inland area, and black or green, Asians red, Hispanic is orange. So if you look at all these areas, yes, some colors are more dominant, but you can actually see like this area, Hispanic and Black populations are really mingled together. There is some Black, an interesting one. This is Dublin, where the Santa Rita jail is. In 2010, the jail population was counted where they were jailed. That's the only reason we actually have this Black population in Dublin. That's another kind of systemic racism on the map. So it's not easy. However, we actually had really good success outreaching our communities. So we need to actually use that success, apply to the 2021 redistricting. So we had to count communities, and the county census committee created a broad coalition that succeeded in increasing self-response rates. And this is super important because self-response rates are the most accurate ways to count our population. So nationwide, it went down to 67% from 74% in 2010. California spent a lot of money and effort, so 2% more than 2010. Alameda County actually went over even better, 76% from 70%. So we counted more accurately in our county, thanks to the county effort and broad coalition we created. So what did you say we need? A community of interest. So it is defined as a population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. It's kind of hard to understand what it is, right? And somehow it's not advanced. Oops. So community of interest in different way. Where is your community located? So you can describe the boundaries of the community: streets, railways, freeways, landmarks, national boundaries, hills and waters. They actually kind of put you in certain neighborhood and describe what brings your community together, what binds it as a community or neighborhood. And examples are shared interests, common social and civic networks, racial and ethnic compositions, cultural identities and languages, similar socioeconomic status, shared political boundary lines from other jurisdictions, and protecting the elected officials or candidates or parties. That's not a community of interest. Sorry. What neighboring areas would be best to combine your community with? That's something you need to think about. So I showed you how mixed population are living in the same area. Can they actually work together to get their shared interest fulfilled? Can they organize together? So if you can, then sure, why not? Be in the same districts. So in other way, what kind of stuff you can use? So this is empty Alameda County. What is the community interest? Elementary school attendance boundaries. So which elementary school you go, then you will know other moms and dads. So that's a community of interest. How about rental housing burden? How much are you paying for your rent? Are you rich enough so your rents are affordable, or it goes over 30% and it's really a burden, huge burden. You are struggling to pay for the other necessary stuff to live. How about health access? So health price index is used to evaluate our healthiness for the community. So the darker the color is, less healthy people living in there. It's combination of the health access, poverty, or actually healthcare and actually the environment itself. So if you have more asthma because of a bad air quality, that puts you in the worst, least healthy place. So of course, the Oakland actually has a very compressed neighborhood with lots of traffic and everything. So the healthy place index quartile, so it's not really great. And if you remember, more white folks living area has healthier environment. That's where the systemic racism can be seen, just like that. And how about water districts? We actually share the water with neighborhood communities. So this is just a few examples, but you may get idea, right? So the second part of the AB 849 is standardize the districting process. So how many hearings are, when and where they should be, how many languages should be available, how outreach is put together, public input, how they can actually do things. So where the hearings, mailings, emailing, whatever. So there should be more ways to make public input. And how the hearings notification is going to put together. And recording. Everything needs to be recorded. Commissioner just said everything is transparent. We don't hide anything. That's what we want to see. And that's how AB 849 Fair Maps Act is actually put together. And website. Somebody actually said, why we have the 2010 website? Well, now at least website for that effort is available next 10 years. So people can actually go back and look what happened. So that's also a very important part. And Alameda County redistricting timeline is a little bit different from the Citizen Commission timeline because Citizen Commission's districting actually got a little bit more extra time. So in April, the apportionment data, California population is over 39 million. That's already published. And right now, we, as community organizers, we already started outreach and the county is joining us soon. And July, county website and the public input meetings notification and launch probably is coming. And August 15th through 30th, census data expected to deliver to the state. And that data needs a little bit of massaging because as I mentioned previously, the incarcerated population is now going to get counted at their previous residence. So they have to actually put those manipulation done before citizen commissions or the county or cities receive their census data. And the census data with those adjustments expected sometime in September to October. We don't know exact dates yet. State is working on those data and we should know soon how soon it will be, but that can be changed. And then we will need, after the census data gets available, we will have the public input meetings to draw the lines. And we are hoping to actually have the line drawing sessions we can attend, but that we don't know. And how much time we have, that is just still up in the air. And so this is the pre-draft maps. And with, I hope, consultant help, the county will draft district map and it will be released. And after that, there will be more public input meetings and line drawing sessions. So if we want them to be changed, we will have a chance to put our input. And then there needs to be 2 meetings, the first reading and second reading, But December 15th, county has to adopt the final map at the moment. If the state legislatures make adjustment, this can be changed. So now you kind of know what's going on. So the call to action step by step. First, learn the rules. As you could actually just experienced, it's complicated and it's so wonky. You really need to know the rules. And then organize your community. What level of the redistricting, local redistricting you want to get involved? Or you just want to help the citizen commission, the state level, because you are interested in the Congress, state level legislatures. Or you may actually have really, really bad city council and you want to focus on city councilman redistricting. But this is only applying, the local redistricting only applies for those cities and districts. You actually have the districts. So you have to pick and choose where you want to organize. And clarify your goals. What issues do you want to gather people around? Or how will better districts create better representation and more attention on your issues? So this is not about elected officials you have. This is really about your community and the issues you need to actually kind of get together and solve. So do you want to advocate for keeping your community of interest together? Or do you have specific communities to go with? Each community actually have to find out what you really want to do through the redistricting. You cannot do them all, so you need to find what you want. And then at the end, we all have to testify at hearings or submit our community of interest through other method. And then we still have to advocate. We just cannot believe everything goes smoothly as you want without pushing. We all know that, right? So how are you going to advocate? And what are you going to advocate? That's also something you have to think about. In Alameda County, we actually started already, so that's just a little bit different. So this is what you can actually do. If you want to do the local redistricting, visit commoncause.org, local redistricting 2021. That's one place you can go. Also, League of Women Voters and ACLU actually are organizing around it. So you can probably find other resources, and it's in Alameda County's redistricting website, other resources. So you can go there. And that's something you cannot find at Redraw the Line Citizens Commission's stuff because they don't advocate. We do. Find out about your county and city. So where are they in terms of the redistricting? Alameda County started. I live in Livermore. City of Livermore hasn't actually started at all. So I'm now asking city council member, what are you guys doing? We don't have a lot of time. So let's get started. That's what our conversation is with the city. And organize your community. Do you just need one group? If you have a group, is that enough? Or do you need to create a coalition? And decide on your goals and testify at hearings. So you will probably need to find out how you can actually educate your communities and submit COI. And then at the end, advocate for fair redistricting and fair maps. So that's something you can do. For Alameda County people, we have a coalition and the website is alcoredistricting.org. And you can join the coalition in 3 ways. Petition is for advocacy. We are asking Alameda County Board of Supervisors to do the good job. Pledge is for you pledging to commit, participating this process. And it's not only the county, city, county, state. As Commissioner said, you need to actually put community of interest in everywhere. So that's your pledge. And volunteer. We will start knocking doors, maybe not, or go to the farmers market, going to the events. Since the California is opening up, we will have the in-person opportunities. And we have the Facebook and Instagram, alcohol redistricting. So we would like you to join us. And our goals, it's simple. Advocate for inclusive and equitable process for the county. To do that, we need to build a robust coalition and we need to educate our communities. So that's our first goal. And after the draft maps are released, we are going to advocate for a fair map in our own, what do you say? We will actually talk to our coalition members and which one represents us best. And then we are going to push for that one. And the testifying and advocate, and important thing is we have a good relationship with the county and county staff. So we are going to work with them. So thank you. And is there any questions? So I can answer the general questions and also the county questions, but we also have some special guests. Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing here. And Sarah Lamnin, my partner, was here. Are you still here, Sarah? Yes,
I am.
she is. So Sarah is a Hayward City Council member, but she's so passionate about redistricting. So we are doing this together. We have about 30 organizers and more than 30 organizations, including some cities, school boards, and all kinds of different groups. So we can answer the questions.
I think there was one question in particular to Alameda County when you were showing the map, who benefits and who's burdened, I guess you could say, by the way the lines were drawn in 2011.
You know, we don't talk about it because the coalition goal is not about who the supervisors are and what do we need to do. They are still in power, right? And they are going to vote for this new map. So, you know, pointing fingers do not really help us organize. So that's not what our coalition does. You can actually find out. It's kind of obvious. So if you want to.
I'm not sure if there was some chatter about other issues in the chat, but I'm not sure if I see any other specific question for you. If anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question now, feel free to do that.
Actually, I see Valerie asking the question, listening to the testimony on June 10th. It worried me that a lot of folks seem to be advocating for self-segregating instead of creating a broader COI on shared concerns. What are some talking points about creating broader coalitions? So the coalitions, actually, what we are doing is, at this point, we are not advocating any lines. And so in a way, you want these segregated smaller community of interest first, because community of interest is always going to conflict with each other. So even your own community of interest, when you actually think about the faith community, I don't have one because I'm Buddhist and I don't have temple, so I don't actually have my community of faith. But if you have one faith group, and that may not actually be the same with your school or your political interest, that's always possibility, right? So what we want is as much of community voices to be heard, so we know where all these conflicted community of interests are. And at the end, that somebody, citizens commissioners actually have to kind of argue to each other and find the best map. So there is always a conflict, and like a state coalitions do exist. And what they are doing is they are advocating their own communities. So the Asian groups are doing the AAPI communities. Latino groups are doing their Latino community interests. They will have the conflicts. At the end, they are joining together and trying to find unity map. So that's a little bit different level of the movement, and they have, the budget, and they have lawyers, demographers, so they can actually do that. Most likely, county and city levels, we don't have that kind of resources. But at least if you have coalition, if you have groups together and working, you can talk to each other. And instead of elected officials picking up what they want, we can just come up with, okay, these are the reasons we think this is better than this one. So that's the conversation we really need to have. So until the draft maps are released, what we do is educate our communities in collecting all the testimonies as much as we can. And at that point, we may actually need to change, because in some cities or counties, we may not actually have what we want. Then we have to actually hit them hard. No, this is not what we actually put in. And AB 849 is going to help us, because everything should be open to the public. We can actually say, we have this many input to keep this community together, and then you divided it. So that's one way to actually put things in the right way, right? And another thing I actually noticed is this is ranked area, and the community of interest comes very high before the integrity of city or census designated place. So if the community or neighborhood decide it's more important to be together with other places, cities and census designated places can be divided. And it's okay as long as there is good reason to it. So those are the things, when you actually look at the map, and I just showed evaluation of maps, but I didn't go through, is there a really good reason to violate one thing or another? And I know there is one thing we have to violate. Tri-Valley is not going to have enough population to be one district. So somebody from over the hill has to join us. Who should be? I don't know. Who wants to be with us, or who do we want to with us? So that's something, we have to think about it. And there may be different reasons and different places we want to be with. And that's a little bit the tweaking needs to be from the county. County is boundaries already there, versus Congress, State Assembly, and Senate. There is no boundary there. You can break counties, just like right now, Assembly 16, we are with Contra Costa folks. but actually tribal includes San Remo and Danville, so that makes more sense. So yeah, this is complicated and this is interesting for me. I'm learning more about our communities, so it's fun.
Kyoko, I have a question about, I think on the Alameda County side, I don't know if this is true on the state for the Citizens Commission as well, but you said that once they come up with draft maps, plural, that we advocate for the best one. So does that mean they'll come up with alternative maps, or how does that work?
So at least back in 2010, they actually chose few maps. I can't remember exact. At that point, I was only watching Congress map because that was all I cared about, right? And one university drew this map, and to me and Nikki, my mentor, she was the one. She actually applied for the commissioner, and she just drove me into this process. So I was watching, and we said the maps look like our community interest, as long as, as far as the Bay Area goes. They just made so much sense because where people get together, where you go shop, all those things matters, right? But at the end, current map was chosen. It wasn't our choice, but that was the one they chose. So, and it's totally different from Assembly and Senate map, right? Our Assembly and State Senate, they are more purple. And the tribal is still purple. So yeah, it's interesting. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions to you other than how to access today's slideshow.
I will actually share that. It will be published on the website, more likely. Yeah, and we are on live in Facebook, so you can actually look at that again.
So maybe we can just repost the website link in the chat. Were there any other questions that anyone, just raise your hand now, that weren't answered that you have? Yeah, I think we're going to repost the Alameda County redistricting website. Oh, okay, Rebecca, you want to ask your question?
Yes, this is Rebecca Theobald in Colorado Springs. I'm working with the American Association of Geographers, and we're looking for any geographers who are engaged in this process. So I would be delighted for you to contact me, because we want to make sure that this perspective is part of the conversation.
Yeah, we are not working on geographers at the moment. But what you should probably do is to find the ACLU League of Women Voters in the region. So they have the means and ways to make that happen, I think.
Great, thank you so much.
And I actually see my all on the line OFA friends here. How are you guys doing? Did this help? Great. I see some notes. And Julie.
Oh. Julie, do you want to ask your question?
I was just curious if there's any, excuse me, more information on which seat, when the redistricting occurs, which seat is actually going to be lost in California. Do you know that yet?
No, because we don't have that exact data, right? So when you actually look at the numbers, but our guess is where the low self-response rates were, that means they are undercounted, and that will be probably the area it's gonna lose the seat. So that means Central Valley South, or around Orange County. That's guess. So, and also that's exactly why you want to put your community of interest. If you want to preserve your districts, you actually have to give the reason why your community should be together, right? But it's difficult. But good news is California did good, so we only lost 1 seat. If the Texas and Florida counted better, we could have lost 2 seats. So it's worth spending money and effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions? So what I was heartened to hear, and I haven't seen how that would work, but when the commissioner said that when you submit comments or comments submitted to the state commission will be easily downloadable, and you could submit it to other, so for example, the Alameda County, in my case, I would want them to have that information. So whatever you submit to one can be shared with the others. And, you know, I think we want to try to do that because even if it all matters, it's all part of the understanding what communities of interest. And as you heard, it's, you have representatives throughout the state on the state level commission who represent various interests and regions, but don't really know your neighborhood like you do. And so it's really important to give that input. And the same on the county level, even, you know, and as Kyoko was just saying, it's important to have that public record, public comment, so that if a map is drawn that we think is not fair, there's a basis for saying, hey, you didn't follow the public comments on this topic or on this, you know, particular map, how it was drawn. And, you know, so I think it's really important that we have a voice in this.
Yeah, and I can actually kind of elaborate a little bit about drawing maps for the state. So I added a link to that. So when you go to that website, you really need to create an account because otherwise you cannot save what you're doing. Map itself is just, at the moment, it's just for the community of interest. So you can actually click into the different level. It could be city level. When you're going inside, it can go to the census tract and then the blocks. So you can actually touch and include them or just remove them. It's a little bit tricky, but you can do that. On the side, on the other side, the part of the stuff is not just the maps, and they actually ask about the community of interest, where is located, how can you actually define the area, and so forth. And when I looked at first time, I said, whoa, this is so much information I have to put in. And thus you really need to have an account and you save it so you can go back and actually create all the information and then submit. And it has the export data function, so you can download it and that can be emailed to the other districts. So that's the thing you can do. So for the outreach effort, I am sure the county is going to help us doing that because that's their own interest to get as much as community of interest testimonies. I would love to actually hit the farmers market and start talking to the community members. And one of the idea the other organization brought up is just to have the city map or the county map and have the different colored pencils or the markers to actually draw, okay, this is the healthcare communities. So if you are the Kaiser member, you actually know where all those places you can go to, right? And if you have the different private insurance, the hospital you may go is different. So that's like one healthcare. And the other one is a school district where your kids go to the schools. Which shopping center do you go to? All those kind of things can actually color coordinate it, and that's the self kind of the conflicts of your own communities. But you just have to find out, and even that handwritten map can be taken picture and send it to the county and citizen commissions. So there are just so many ways, and I'm so happy I'm not the one who is putting all this together. That's a huge task. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, so
Otherwise,
Timothy asks, if members of my community of interest are scattered all over California, how do we cover them all in a district?
you can't. It has to be contiguous. You have to be a neighbors. So if your big community is all over the California or over the nation, you have to just bring it down to your own community where you live. So this is probably a good exercise, how you organize the issues. It's easy to actually just go over the different places to find the same or similar minded people, but you have to have the conversation with the neighbors, even though you don't agree with each other politically. Still, you can think about, okay, somebody is speeding this corner and it's very dangerous. Then who should I go to? Who should we go to and change that? That's a neighborhood. That's where you live. So yeah, it's not just about political issues. The neighborhood community issues could be the political issue, but it could be just your neighborhood stuff. Both are important.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I think we're done for today. I just want to announce our next Livermore Indivisible meeting, which will be Sunday, July 11th at 1:30 again. It will have, as a first topic, affordable housing. And then we will have some type of indivisible action that we'll take. So hope to see most of you there, or everyone if you can attend. And thanks everyone for attending today. Hope you got a lot of good information and will act on it and be part of the redistricting process. Thanks, everyone.